I was the one who stayed late while everyone else clocked out, the one who memorized every client's name, who knew which printer jammed and which elevator creaked. I wasn't born into power, but I earned every inch of it. My name is Alina Serrano, and I built my reputation with silence, results, and sacrifice. Not handshakes, not shortcuts, just tireless hours and perfect outcomes. Until the night I found a contract I didn't sign with my signature at the bottom and authorization for a 2.4 million transfer. It was buried in the third drawer of the copy room under outdated HR forms and expired building memos. No one told me to open it. No one expected I'd be working that late. But something felt wrong. The weight of the drawer, the paper clipped too clean, the folder marked with my department's label, but in someone else's handwriting. I pulled it out, and that's when my stomach dropped. My initials, my ID, my name, but not my pen, not my stroke, not my signature. They forged it perfectly, so perfectly that anyone else would believe it was me. But I didn't, and in that moment, I knew I wasn't being careless. I was being hunted. I stayed up all night, going through every transaction I'd approved in the last quarter, double-checking numbers, tracing routing codes, making lists of who had access. There were 4 people who could have pulled that file before me, and only one who had a reason to. Cameron. He sat 3 cubicles over, smiled too wide, laughed too loud, called me boss lady like it was a joke. But he'd been passed over for my promotion last fall after I found the discrepancies he tried to bury in Q3's forecast. I didn't report him then. I warned him privately, told him to clean up the numbers. He did, and I thought that was the end of it. But now there was a 2.4 million ghost transfer and a forged contract with my name on it, and suddenly every smile from him looked like a knife. I didn't have proof yet, but I had instinct, and mine had never failed me. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. By morning, I'd mapped the entire transfer chain, and it stunk. The payment had been split into 3 separate shell accounts, none tied to real vendors, no tax codes, no purchase orders. And someone had marked it Delayed Invoice Reconciliation in a font we don't even use. That wasn't sloppy. That was arrogant. It meant they thought no one would check. It meant they believed I wouldn't fight back. But they were wrong. At 9:03 a.m., I walked into the finance director's office with the entire audit. I didn't accuse. I didn't panic. I asked a simple question. Did you approve this? He looked down at the folder like I'd handed him a bomb, and I knew. He had no idea, which means someone went around both of us and left my name holding the fuse. The IT department owes me nothing, but I know how to ask the right questions. I didn't request a full investigation. I asked for access logs, building entry, printer history. I asked like I already knew the answer, and maybe part of me did. Because when the logs came back, there it was, 2:37 a.m. Someone printed the forged contract from Cameron's workstation and used my login, which should have been impossible unless someone had been watching, learning, waiting. He'd copied the way I moved, my shortcut keys, even my signature stroke. But the mistake was the timestamp. I was in a rideshare home at 2:37 a.m. I had the receipt, and now I had a trail. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for proof. But at some point, they start to look the same. I didn't tell anyone, not legal, not HR, not even Amani, and she's the only one I trust on this floor. Because when you name a threat too early, they hide, and I wanted Cameron exposed. So I worked like everything was normal. I joined meetings, I smiled at the jokes, I complimented the birthday cake he brought for the break room. And when he leaned in close, smelling like arrogance and designer cologne, and said, "Rough night, boss lady," I smiled back and said, "Just spreadsheets." He thought he'd won, and that was good, because scared people run, but arrogant ones, they get sloppy. I gave him time to relax, to think I was still catching up. And meanwhile, I was building a case so airtight he wouldn't just lose his job, he'd need a lawyer. The building's internal security system is updated every Friday at 4 p.m., but not all departments have real-time sync, so I requested a manual poll of Tuesday night's hallway feed, not from IT, from maintenance, because maintenance doesn't ask questions, they just hand you the USB and keep pushing their mop. And when I got the footage, I watched it 100 times. Camera 6 at 2:33 a.m. shows someone entering the copy room wearing a hoodie, gloves, head down. But that gait? That was Cameron. He walks like he's rushing through applause, long strides like he owns the floor. The hoodie was cheap, a distraction, but the shoes? Italian leather, the same ones he wears every Monday because he calls them boardroom Mondays and brags about fashion timing. I paused the footage, zoomed in, frame by frame. Same soles, same lean, same arrogance. Now I had time, now I had location, now I just needed him to confess, without realizing he did. By Thursday, I had the footage, the logs, the audit trail, every piece stacked in silent rows like dominoes waiting for a breath to fall. I didn't go to legal, I didn't go to HR, because paperwork delays justice, and I needed movement. Cameron still laughed like the king of casual, leaned in close during meetings, offered me coffee like we were teammates. I let him, because guilt gets heavy, and heavy people trip. I scheduled a Q4 vendor recap for Friday morning, just the two of us, room 514, glass walls, recording active. He accepted immediately, smiling too wide, thinking this was cleanup or surrender. He had no clue he was walking into a mirror, a room designed to reflect every lie he thought he buried, and I was ready to let him talk, just enough to hang himself on his own phrasing. He talked for 26 minutes, his tone smooth, his eyes darting just enough to betray calculation. I asked questions. Casual, light, like I didn't know the answer already. He mentioned vendors I hadn't brought up, dates I hadn't asked for, amounts down to the decimal, too perfect, too rehearsed. At the 20-minute mark, he said the words, "You signed off on that one, remember?" And I didn't flinch, because I needed it clean. I asked, "Did I?" And let silence press the air between us like a weight. He chuckled, looked down, adjusted his watch. He thought it was harmless banter, an inside joke between peers. But to me, it was confession wrapped in charm. And when I ended the meeting, I thanked him, shook his hand, told him I'll circle back. He smiled like a man who'd buried the past, not knowing I had already scheduled the unearthing. I didn't speak to him the rest of the day. I didn't correct him in meetings, didn't respond to his jokes, didn't flinch when he passed my desk with that smug nod. Because when people feel unchallenged, they unravel on their own. I sent the file to legal at 8:03 a.m., marked confidential, attached the footage, the logs, the signed audit summary, and the recorded transcript from room 514. I didn't editorialize. I let the numbers speak, let his words bury him. I didn't even use his name, just Employee B. By 10:12, I was called upstairs to meet with compliance, and they didn't offer coffee. They asked questions. I gave answers, fact by fact, without tone or spin. Because when you've done the work, you don't need drama. You just need daylight. And when I stepped out of that room, they didn't shake my hand. They nodded, because they knew it wasn't personal, it was professional. And for me, that was enough. They waited until Friday at 4 p.m., the time when inboxes slow and people start thinking about wine. But Cameron got a calendar invite for a one-on-one with legal. No subject, just a room number. He walked in like it was nothing. Half smile, confident shoes, voice loud enough for everyone to hear down the hall. And 10 minutes later, he came out pale, quiet. He didn't pack, he didn't argue, just left his keycard and walked. The team noticed, but no one asked. I didn't look up when he passed me. I didn't need to. He knew. And that was the justice. I didn't need applause. I didn't need revenge. I just needed the truth to stop whispering. And for once, it did. They waited until Friday at 4 p.m., the time when inboxes slow and people start thinking about wine. But Cameron got a calendar invite for a one-on-one with legal. No subject, just a room number. He walked in like it was nothing. Half smile, confident shoes, voice loud enough for everyone to hear down the hall. And 10 minutes later, he came out pale, quiet. He didn't pack, he didn't argue, just left his keycard and walked. The team noticed, but no one asked. I didn't look up when he passed me. I didn't need to. He knew. And that was the justice. I didn't need applause. I didn't need revenge. I just needed the truth to stop whispering. And for once, it did. The internal memo went out quietly. No names, no drama, just a title. Change in compliance structure, effective immediately. By Monday, his desk was reassigned, the chair adjusted, the email deleted, like he'd never been there. But I remembered, and I kept the original folder, not to hold a grudge, but to remind myself that silence is powerful, but proof is louder. The new team was different. They watched each other less, trusted each other more, and I didn't stay late anymore, didn't need to, because the system that almost buried me was now one I'd rebuilt, stronger, wider, less easy to manipulate. And sometimes, at 4 p.m., when the halls go quiet, I walk past printer 4, just once, and nod at it like an old enemy we survived. 2 weeks later, I was called into the boardroom, but not for a reprimand, for a rewrite. The compliance team wanted my help, not just on Cameron's case, but on every protocol he bypassed. They handed me a folder. This time, the signature line was blank, waiting for mine. Not faked, not copied, real. And when I signed it, the paper didn't shake in my hand. It settled clean, like the kind of authority that's earned quietly. I didn't smile, didn't thank them, just nodded. Because validation isn't about noise. It's about knowing you were right, even when no one believed you. I walked out of that room with no fanfare, no applause, just a new badge and a hallway that finally felt like mine. My new office didn't have walls. It had glass, every angle exposed, every step visible, and that was fine because I had nothing to hide. They placed me one floor higher. Different badge, different clearance, but the same instincts. I watched patterns, the way people logged in, the times they printed, the files they accessed, not because I didn't trust them, but because that's how it starts. People get comfortable, start shaving minutes, cutting corners, and then one day they don't see the line they crossed until someone else does. The difference now was that I was the someone, and I didn't need permission to protect the floor. I just needed signal. Her name was Mara. She transferred in from the West Coast. Quick with numbers, sharp with language, but too eager. She asked about print logs on day 3, asked who had badge clearance after hours, and when I answered, she smiled too fast, like someone checking boxes, not just learning. And I watched because I'd seen that hunger before. Cameron wore it like cologne, and Mara, she wore it like armor. Clean-pressed, efficient, too smooth. I let her have space, let her run her audits, let her poke around. Because if she was looking for cracks, she'd find mine sealed, and hers just beginning to show. Friday afternoon, I checked the shared audit directory. Mara's name wasn't there. No uploads, no notes. But she told me her draft was done, said she'd file by noon. I waited until 5. Still nothing. So I checked the server logs, searched by device ID, not username, and there it was. Her laptop accessed a restricted folder, vendor schedules from last quarter, one that only legal should touch, not finance, not her. And the timestamp matched the moment she told me she was heading out for lunch. It wasn't a mistake, it was a test. And now I knew who was next to blink. Monday morning. She left her bag open on the floor, the zipper half undone, the corner of a red folder sticking out, one we don't use anymore, old branding, retired templates. I waited until she went to refill her water, then stepped past it, just close enough to glance. No name, no label, just a single sticky note tucked inside with my initials. She wanted me to see it. She wanted a reaction. But I've learned, the one who blinks first loses. So I walked on. No change in pace, no glance back, and later, that folder was gone. Talia works reception. She sees everything, hears more, and says nothing. But that afternoon, she messaged me short, one line. Mara asked about your old role. That was enough. I didn't respond, didn't press, just watched. And 2 hours later, Mara walked into my office, smiled, said she was building a new compliance flow, wanted to know how I handled escalation. I answered plainly, no details, no weakness, because questions aren't always for answers. Sometimes they're just looking for cracks, and this time she found none. 3 weeks later, the audit was closed. New systems, new rules, new eyes on every step. They gave me full oversight, not out of loyalty, out of trust, and that's the kind I value. The floor felt lighter, not silent, just steady. People passed and nodded, not because they feared me, but because they knew I'd earned it. I don't stay late anymore, not because I'm done, but because I don't have to. The room knows who I am now. And the next time someone tries to forge a name, they better pray it's not mine.